Hello YouTube, Sea Monsters here with another traditional knife video slash discussion. Today we're going to be talking about another fine Great Eastern Cutlery Northfield knife. The one you see before you is a Model 65, also known as the Ben Hogan model. Ben Hogan was an interesting character. He was involved in, let's call it the oil rush of Pennsylvania an awfully long time ago. By some accounts he was rather nefarious. By most accounts he was a rogue. Certainly, looking back, rogue or not, he qualifies as an interesting individual. Why GEC chose to name this model after him, I couldn't tell you. That part of it I don't know. But nevertheless, it's a very interesting knife. Before we get into that, I'll give you a real quick, let's call it sidetrack. Many years ago, though not as long ago as Ben Hogan was around, but many years ago when I was a young boy, my father carried an old case slimline bareheaded trapper. And basically it's just a very slim, slender, small profile, long blade, but single bladed slip joint knife. And he carried that for many, many, many years. And that was, oh good grief, that would have been going back to when Case was known for even their basic knives being very high quality. But he used the daylights out of that knife. And it was, of course, their chrome vanadium steel, and he sharpened it and sharpened it and sharpened it, way down to the nubbins. But ever since growing up around that, I've been somewhat fascinated by single-bladed knives, which is why, I'm going to make a connection here for you. That's why I've gotten into the Model 65, that series of single-bladed knife with Great Eastern Cutlery. Now let's get back on track here. The one before you is a model called Fool's Gold, and the Fool's Gold really describes the acrylic handle material, and that's all of this. You may or may not be able to see it in the camera. My camera's not that great, so it may not show it, but it's kind of a yellow with some light colored fleck chips or whatever you want to call it. It looks a lot like gold. In fact, quite a bit like Fool's Gold. Fool's Gold, if you don't know what it is, Google it. I'm not going to explain it here, but you may find that somewhat interesting. Being as this is a Northfield knife and their premium, Great Eastern Cutlery's premium series, it features some things that aren't really found on their basic Titty-Ute brand or even their home brand, the Great Eastern Cutlery version. This model has pinched, you can see them here, hopefully. The bolster, front bolster is pinched. It's also fluted, and the flutes are these lines running up and down across the bolster. It's actually a triple flute. You can see the nickel silver shield. The bolsters, by the way, are nickel silver. Technically, a lot of people call this a bolster, but it's really an end cap. Kind of the same thing, it's semantics. Simple back spring. This is a serialized knife, meaning there is a serial number etched on the front bolster. This knife has a half stop. Whoop. Hopefully it'll stand up while I tell you a little bit about it. Okay, hopefully that's working. Half stop is where the tang is squared off, and when you open it, it first stops at 90 degrees. That's how it's positioned right now. While it's in that position, I'm going to point out a couple of things to you. This blade shape is unusual. GEC has done a few of the Ben Hogan series in it. It's a saber grind. It's not their normal flat grind. It also has a long pull and a nail nick at the front, which I think is very interesting. There were 25 of this particular model made. This, I think, is number 19 of 25. So, kind of an interesting thing. I like the way it looks. It's just a little bit different. So, The handle is 4.5 inches long, and the blade is 3 3/8. So you can see it's a pretty good sized knife, and I've got medium large to large size hands, and you can get a full grip on this. On the back, it's got an etching here. It says 1/25. You can also see the swedge on it. On the front, right here, hopefully you can see that, it's got Northfield Unexcelled etched onto the presentation side of the blade. Beautiful knife, single back spring, nice and thick, so it's got quite a bit of resistance when you open it. Blade tang is etched with Northfield Unexcelled, made in USA. That's on the presentation side. On the back side, it has the model number 656111, and it says Titusville Iron Works. If you want to know what that model number translates into, you can either look it up on the internet or send me a PM and I'll tell you about it. I've also answered that, I believe, in a previous video. So you can see that's this knife. Now, one of the fun things about knife collecting, and from my perspective, this is true universally, whether we're talking old slip joint knives or more modern knives, though it tends to be a little more developed in the slip joint knife community, and that is that there are a lot of different versions of the same model. And I didn't bring them here for this video because it would have meant a whole lot of digging through boxes. I have a whole bunch of different Model 65s. It is one of my favorite patterns from GEC, so I have quite an affinity for it. Here in the recent past couple of years, GEC came out with some versions of this. Let's call them takeoffs. And for example, I'll get the fool's gold into the background here. Here's another version. This is a Model 64. It is a lockback in burnt stag, and again, this is a Northfield. Same basic features as the fool's gold one. We got pinched and triple fluted front bolster. End cap, both are made out of nickel silver. We have a nickel silver pinned on shield up front. It says Unexcelled. While the clock's going off, I'll let you look at those beautiful stag scales. They're really gnarly, just the way I like them. Those are my favorite kind, when the stag scales are really gnarly. As I said, this is a lockback. That's the lockback engagement or unlocking button right there. This blade, the size and everything is the same as the other one, but this blade, as opposed to the fool's gold version, is a full flat grind, has a beautifully done swedge at the front and a long pole for the nail. You can call it a nick, but it's not a nick, it's a long pole. Etched on the front, Northfield Unexcelled. This again is a serialized one. This is actually number 25 of 25. This is a beautiful, beautiful knife. I'm going to get that out of the way here. And indeed, one of the favorites in my collection. I just really like this one. We all have preferences, and this one rings my bell. Just disengage lock. It doesn't have a half stop because it is a lockback. So nice and beautiful. And then we get into one with Cocobolo grips. I know some people aren't into the wood-handled knives. I am. I think they have a warmth and beauty that's very unique. This knife is the same. It's another 64. It's the same as the other one. This is not a serialized knife, but it does have the pinched and triple fluted front bolster, end cap, nickel silver. Has this shield, which is more typical of the woods and the acrylics. Again, lockback, full flat ground blade, nice swedge. Beautifully done swedge. That's actually my favorite blade shape of GECs. And now we get to another version. This one in my hand is another 64, but it's called the Babylon Hill version. And it's a lockback like the others. Point out a couple of differences here. While it's got the triple fluted front bolster, they're not pinched, they are chamfered. And by chamfered, hopefully this will show up in camera, they're angled. You can see how they're cut in an angle, this detail right here. So a little different there. It's triple fluted right at the very tip, and then it has two additional flutes up towards the chamfered end of the bolster. This is also a swing guard, kind of like Case's cheetah knives, only I think this is executed better. There we go. You can see the swing guard. As you open it, it kicks open, and its intent is to protect your fingers in a thrust scenario. This is in Chechen rosewood. That's what these handle scales are. And again, nickel silver on the bolsters and the shield. Shield is pinned on. Brass pins on all of these. Lockback. Full flat grind blade with the Northfield unexcelled etch on the front. Beautiful, beautiful knife. And another one. There we go. This is Kingwood. Yet another version. Like the one I just showed you. It's got the chamfered front bolster. All the flutes, nickel silver, everything's the same. It's just different handle material. Gorgeous, gorgeous wood handle scales. Beautiful knife. So the moral of this story is that collecting knives can be a lot of fun, and a big part of the fun's in getting all the different versions that a certain pattern number or model was released in. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Have yourself a great day.